Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I brought with me the Melody Beatty books as we near the end of the year, and I looked at both of the titles, and they're so adversely different that I thought, we'll just read them both and see what they have to say to us. So let me get into the first one, which is The Language of Letting Go by Melody Beatty. It's a sister book to Codependent No More. And for the 26th of December, which is today, the day after Christmas, did y'all have a nice Christmas? Did you have a good time? All right, it says growth, December 26th. Just as when we were children and grew out of favorite toys and clothes, we sometimes grow out of things as adults. People, jobs, homes. This can be confusing. We may wonder why someone or something that was so special and important to us last year doesn't fit the same way in our life today. We may wonder why our feelings have changed. When we were children, we may have tried to fit into an outgrown circle or outgrown article of clothing onto our body. Now, as adults, we may go through a time of trying to force fit attitudes that we have outgrown. We may need to do this to give ourselves time to realize the truth. What worked last year, what was so important and special to us in times past, doesn't work anymore because we've changed. We've grown. We can accept this as a valid and important part of recovery. We can let ourselves go through experimentation and grief as we struggle to make something fit, trying to figure out if indeed it no longer fits and why. We can explore our feelings and thoughts around what has happened. Then we can put last year's toys away and make room for the new. Today I will let last year's toys be what they were, last year's toys. I will remember them with fondness for I will remember them with fondness for the part they played in my life. Then I will put them away and make room for the new. Wow, I really like this meditation a lot. You know, I was actually just having this conversation with my cousin Caroline a few days ago, and we were talking about just like friendships in our life and things like that. And, you know, I can remember 30 years ago when I first heard the saying, 25 years ago when I first heard the saying, people come into our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And what I have experienced, I don't know the first time I heard that, but what I have experienced since the first time that I heard that was that I have had friends of mine that have come into my life for a reason, and I know that now. I've learned great lessons from them, but they're no longer in my life. But that doesn't also mean that I have to look at that friendship with resentment and anger. I can look at it that it served its purpose and we had a good time, and whatever, and it's no longer. I've also had friendships of mine that have been season friendships. Those are sometimes difficult for me because I sometimes wonder why they just lasted a season, and a season can be a long time. It can be like your high school career, or it can be like your 20s, or it can be like 6 months. I mean, it doesn't have to be a short time or a long time. Like a season can be a long time, It can be a season of your life kind of thing. It could be like a whole entire job. I have friends of mine, I had very, very dear friends of mine that I worked with every single day when I worked in treatment that, I really haven't talked to some of those people since the day that I left, I mean, they came to my mom's funeral, and then other than that, I really haven't ever talked to them since, And these were people that I worked side by side with, knew their, families, and we talked every single day and whatever, And I think that's just the nature of leaving jobs sometimes. There have been other friendships that I've tried to keep, and they just have, kind of gone in other directions, or they've moved, or whatever. And then I think there's been, friendships that have been seasons where things have occurred, and, and sometimes you look back. Have you ever had a friendship, it's you're not as close as you used to be, but you don't really understand why. And even when you bring it up to that person, if you see them, or if you talk to them, or whatever, it's you don't really, understand, what happened. And, so it's interesting. It's and I'm somebody that is always trying to kind of repair those, friendships or make them better or whatever. And, I'm do I want to share this story or do I not want to? So it was interesting because about a year ago, I've a friend of mine that was very close to me back in the day. And, I would say in the last 15 years, we have just kind of gone our, I wouldn't say we've gone our separate ways. Nothing happened. We never had a fight. We never had an argument. Nothing like that ever happened, right? But I just don't talk to them as much as I used to. And they don't reach out to me. It's not like it's one-sided, right? So anyway, I was like, I saw them in a picture on Facebook, and like I clicked on their thing, and we were no longer friends. And I was like, oh wow, this is like interesting to me, you know? And I'm not somebody that gets ate up with this stuff usually, but this was like a person that had been like a really dear friend to me at a period of my life. And so it was interesting because I had another reason to reach out to them, you know, about, I don't know, like a month later. And so when we were talking on the phone, I said, can I ask you a question? And they were like, yeah, sure. And I said, did I do something to upset you? And they were like, no, why? And I said, well, because you like unfriended me on Facebook, and like I didn't understand it, and I feel like, and this is just the thing, like I could care less about Facebook. I don't get ate up with Facebook or whatever. But when it's somebody that you know that kind of does, and then they deliberately go in to look at your Facebook and unfriend you, like, to me, like, that's a statement, right? And so they were like, no, not at all. Like, you know, oh, you know, this happens every once in a while. Like, you know, my partner goes in and like, because they have like a joint account, and like cleans out a bunch of people. Well, this partner knows how close we were, you know? So I thought that was kind of an interesting response. And they were like, oh, well, you know, like I'll add you again and whatever. And I said, oh, okay. Added me again, accepted again, whatever. We talked a couple more times within, you know, the year. So, and I think what's happened, maybe, I don't know, like, is that they've become friends with somebody that I also knew in my past. That, like, I'm very confused about all this. So, but this has just become like a therapy session. So anyway, so I was on Facebook again and saw a picture of this friend of mine and like clicked it to go to their account. We weren't friends again. They had unfollowed me off of Facebook, unfriended me off of Facebook again. And I kind of laughed the way that I'm laughing now. I'm like, seriously? Like, and I have no need to reach out again, you know? But I think, like, for me, and looking at that friendship, like, it's definitely a seasoned friendship. And I just kind of need to accept that instead of realizing that we were so close at one point in our lives. And we aren't anymore, you know? Like, you know, every time we talk, we're like, we're going to go to dinner, we're going to do this. And we never do. There's no follow through. And I think, honestly, the reality is, I don't really have that much of an interest in going out to dinner with them. And I don't think they really have that much of an interest in going out to dinner with me and catching up. I just think that that's the truth, right? And so, and it's not like hard feelings or whatever. It's just our lives look so completely different today. And that's okay, you know? It doesn't have to be this heartfelt thing. And it's like, you know, I think we always think that there has to be this falling out or something happened. You know, it is what it is. And I just think that we're just not in each other's lives the way that we used to be. And that's okay, you know? And this is what I was talking about with my cousin Caroline, was that I saw this Oprah, I don't know when, like, God, it was probably like the first year that I got sober, because I can remember the friend of mine that it happened with. And it happened with this girl that I had been friends with for several years. And it happened, I saw the show right before it happened. And she came into town, and she was like very demanding, and it just was a lot to deal with her. And I just was like, I forgot that she was like this. And I can remember, like, we were out and we were doing stuff, and she was like, run here, and she wanted me to put all this alcohol in my car, and I wasn't comfortable with it because I was in early sobriety and all this kind of stuff. And I can remember watching this Oprah, and the Oprah was about that it's okay to say goodbye to people in your life, that it's okay to say goodbye to friends and even family members if you need to, because there are people that are not healthy for you in your life, you know? And I can remember she like wanted me to come to this like party, and I wasn't comfortable coming to it. And so like I had her suitcase and stuff at my house, and I like put it in a car, and I like drove to this party, and I was like, you need to come down and get your suitcase. And she was like, are you serious? Blah, 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 whatever. And I was like, you need to get your suitcase out of my car. I remember I went and I put it out of the street. I was very calm, and I put it out on the street, and I looked at her and I said goodbye. And I said, this has really hurt my feelings, you know, that this is, and she was like, I can't believe, she was like screaming at me on the street, and I drove away. I mean, you know, that's just how it was. And I think she had her arm in my car or something like that. And I was like, you need to get your arm out of my car. And then she like looked at me like I was going to like, you know, and then I like left, you know, the situation. What's funny about that is about 5 or 6 years ago, she like reached out to me. We have like this guy that I used to date, and a mutual friend of her, it was like her best friend. He passed away years ago, but she reached out to me and we were talking, and it was like we had like grown as adults and we were able to have an adult conversation today. We don't talk very often anymore. Like, our lives again are very different. I think she was also a friend of mine that was a seasoned friend. But you know, like we were able to reconnect down the road and it be okay. Like, and us kind of laugh at the times that had happened. And she was like, girl, I'm so sorry, you know, for what had happened. And I was willing to accept that and that kind of thing, you know. And I think that's it, is also being able to remain open to the lessons that come your way. And then I can also say that I've been very, very blessed to have lifetime friendships as well. And I don't know that I necessarily think that those lifetime friendships have to be friendships that are friendships that like you see or talk to the person on a regular basis. You know, I had a friend of mine that I made when I was like 18 or 19 years old. She and I lived together. We lived together before and after I got sober. She and I partied a lot together. She was very supportive of me in my sobriety, my early sobriety. She now lives in Germany and she watches a lot of my videos. We talk a couple times a year, you know, and maybe email each other. We probably talk one time a year on phone and maybe like email each other, you know, 5 times a year or whatever. Our lives, like I said, look very different. I would say she's a lifetime friend of mine, you know. If she needed anything from me, I would be there in a heartbeat, you know. She was a very big part of my family at the time that we were like living together and she was here, and I know her family and things like that, you know. My friend Tanya Jean, I mean, which is funny because Tanya enters my life at the time that this friend exited my life. And so it's like I had 2 kind of lifetime friends that kind of like backed, you know, up to each other like bookends. And I always think of that Simon and Garfunkel song, Bookends, but anyway, you know, Tanya's been my friend for 25 years. I mean, it's amazing to be able to say that I've had a best friend for 25 years. The hard thing about that, though, is that, you know, Tanya doesn't know before that. Tanya doesn't know my using history. I mean, she wasn't, I mean, she knows that because of the stories, but she wasn't there for it. Tanya doesn't know my growing up, my high school. You know, she didn't experience that. Tanya knows my mom. That, I think, is one of the greatest things, is that Tanya knew my mom, met my mom, hung out with my mom. And so, like, when I tell stories, like, Tanya will, like, laugh and say, you know, like, oh, yeah, I remember that, or whatever, you know? And I feel so blessed to have a couple lifetime friends. You know, today in my life, like, we just, like, ran into our friend Melissa, you know, when we were leaving brunch, and she was there with her family and stuff, and it's like, Melissa and her husband Jason, I know that they'll be lifetime friends, you know. My friend Valerie, I know will be a lifetime friend of mine, you know, and I have several friends of mine that will be lifetime friends of mine that I know that today. And I think you know that the older you get, but I also think that your circle gets smaller to some degree, and I'm okay with that today, you know. I don't know that I think when I was younger, I felt like I needed to define myself by the friendships that I had. And I think, like, you know, I think it's easy to say I'd rather have quality friendships over quantity friendships. But what I want to say about that is, that's not saying anything about the person, okay? That's not saying that that person wasn't a quality person. I've had many quality people in my life that the friendship, or the quality of the friendship just wasn't there. It fell apart. We just didn't work on it together, right? But they were fantastic people. They were amazing people and still are, you know? I've also had so many people that have come into my life that have really taught me invaluable lessons, and I'm so grateful for that, you know? So, yeah, I just, you know, I feel like, I don't know. You know, my friend Tanya always says, you know, that the road narrows as you get older, and I think that that applies in so many different ways. And I think definitely in one way it's applied for me is in friendships, that the road has narrowed, you know, and what I want and what I desire. And I also think this, you know, is that I remember, like, this is kind of a funny story, but I was dating this guy, like, when I first got out of treatment, and I remember, you know, saying to my dad something like, oh, he's this, and he's that, and he's this, and whatever, and I looked at my dad, and I said something about, like, well, what do you think about all of that? And my dad's response to me was, you have to be what you want to get. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, in any friendship, in friendships, in, you know, in employment, in romantic relationships, in anything, like, you have to be what you want to get. So, like, if you want the greatest friend in the world, you have to be the greatest friend in the world, you know? if you want a loyal friend, you have to be a loyal friend, you know? And I think that that's important to remember, you know? And I think we sometimes forget that. We want to complain about what we're not getting in friendships, romantic partners, employment situations, or whatever. But then, are we falling short of that as well? Or are we part of, like, you know, Tanya always says, are you part of the solution, or are you part of the answer? Are you part of the problem, or are you part of the solution? I want to be part of the solution today, you know, for all of the things that come my way in my life. I want to ask myself, you know, like, are you doing the most that you can do to contribute to these relationships so that they're the best relationships possible? So anyway, let me know what you think about all of that in the comment section below. I'm going to save the other meditation for another day, maybe next year. On the 26th of December, because I'm sure I'll read from these next year as well. And I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.